Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Scott Coyne. I'll be your host for this episode, and joining me, as always, to review another eventful week in Belgian football, it's our very own Mr. Joris Beck. How are you doing this evening, Joris? What have you been up to?
Well, I'm doing better than Ben's laptop for sure. But actually a good week. Obviously, what's not to like? Genk won twice, even though there's a lot more to say about the games themselves. Actually, I guess, but that's all really good. And I even transfer window shut, and I transferred myself into a car and got my driver license yesterday. So that's yeah, all good news this week actually.
Yeah, that is fantastic news. Yeah, congratulations to you, Joris. You can
Except
send
except that part for Ben, of course.
Yeah, you can send your congratulations cards here to us at the BFP in digital form and social media. Joris mentioned our Ben, who we were expecting to be with us this evening, but essentially his laptop has died on him, quite literally. So this time next week he should be back with an alternate device. Yes. That's why it's just the two of us this week. So Ben will be back next week. So what's been happening this week? Well, we've reached match day 23, Joris. Ral and Ghent finished one apiece. Cercle lost convincingly to Antwerp, 4-0. Favourite son of the Cercle fans, a certain Thibaut Summers, coming back to haunt his old side big time, 2 assists and a goal against his former club. Zulte lost 1-0 to Westerlo. St Truden missed an opportunity to go top outright. The informed side at the moment lost to another informed side at home. They lost 2-0 to Charleroi. The Classico finished Standard 2, Anderlecht 0. More on Anderlecht in a moment. Dender lost 2-1 to Joris' side, Genk. Union Saint-Gilloise beat Club Brugge 1-0 in the big topper of the weekend, and Leuven and Mechelen finished 2 goals apiece. So last week was a pretty Anderlecht heavy episode, Joris, and for those of you of a mauve persuasion, you'll probably be pleased to hear that this is also going to be quite an Anderlecht heavy episode. Last week, the topic of discussion was a certain Besnik Hazi, Anderlecht's T1. Would he stay? Would he go? Well, he's now gone. We did have the Classico this weekend, Joris, and Anderlecht lost that. The performance wasn't great. Not too many positives to take away from an Anderlecht perspective. And, a matter of hours after the game, after the side returned to Brussels, he was relieved of his duties, which surprised probably nobody. I think that would be fair to say.
Yeah, I don't think so. And well, for the Anderlecht, those of the move persuasion, as you mentioned it, I'm not sure if you're happy that you got into the media where this kind of news anyway. Generally, the media jumps on the bad things, of course, as well. So, we are foul of ourselves here as well. But okay, and yeah, that's definitely needed. Still, I guess. Yeah, nobody's surprised by that. I guess the ultimatum last week was already set, and yeah, the game was just not good enough. Even though they had their chances, actually, to talk a little bit about the fatal game for him as well. They did have their chances, especially Bertaccini, but they did not take them, any of them even. So yeah, it was not enough. And there was some shambolic defending as well, of course, and a lack of they were not great anyway in general. At the start of the game, they fought themselves a bit into the game, but way too late. That's I guess what you probably can say, and they did not get away with that. So you sometimes can, but they did not. Yeah. That's so, but my prediction of last week did not come true. The game was actually played out, and there were not too many incidents. Yeah, a few silly things going on, of course, and still, but nothing major has come out of that game from the fan groups. Maybe it was good that Standard actually had a good start, even though they didn't score in the first 5 minutes either. But still, they had a good start. So that at least that fan base was quite happy with what they saw on the pitch for once, and at the same time, the Anderlecht fans. Well, many of them were probably already like, okay, yeah, maybe if we lose this game, then he's gone anyway. So then at least we don't have to create any more issues distractions of the game to talking about Haas here, of course, even though there are still bigger issues for them for sure. On which you might grill me in a second as well, I'm sure. But it's a bit of a turmoil, not only on the field actually. Also they actually have been quite busy. One of the busier sides on the transfer on the last day of the transfer window. So that transfer deadline day. We'll see how it will look like afterwards. Also, the questions that you also will fire back at me are probably around who should they hire and what kind of hire should they make. Maybe first of all that one, but I'll let you get the walk me through those questions first, maybe, and then I'll answer and add stuff if there's more that I want to say.
Yeah, well, there are just so many questions, as you were saying, and kind of, I suppose for me, in thinking about this, the obvious question is where they go next. But my feeling about this is there's quite a lot for Anderlecht to sort out at the moment. Really, there is. I mean, there is the very real possibility that Sporting Director Olivier Renard could also be departing in the next few days. The likelihood of that has increased kind of quite a lot recently, and on his own record, it's not great. It really isn't great. They haven't had a great window. In truth, you're right. They've certainly been active very late on. Obviously, they've lost Nielsen Angulo, which is a blow because. Although there was an expectation and he was attracting a lot of interest, I think there was a feeling that he probably was going to stay. But when an offer of that scale comes in, and Anderlecht in a situation where they effectively have to try and sell before they bring anybody in, then they were kind of backed into a corner on that one. Obviously, he's been one of their best players, arguably their best player, joint top scorer. So he is going to be missed at a time when they're definitely not scoring the sort of goals that they should be for the relative firepower that they've got. And that period early on in the season where, they looked quite bright and we were quite positive about them. We said lots of quite nice things about them, the three of us, much earlier in the season when it looked like they were playing with a degree of freedom. And all of that seems to kind of drained away, really. And usually when that goes, it's very difficult to get that back without making some kind of coaching change. But yeah, so many questions around Anderlecht. I suppose the first one is, what's the profile? Because there's kind of two schools of thought on this. There are those Anderlecht fans who say, right, well, we need a leader, somebody with significant experience who fits the history and the heritage of the profile of the club. And then there are those who say, well, that matters less than finding, a good coach, a good modern coach. And I think they were alluding to those fans who prefer the second option of those who say, well, look, there's lots of really, really good younger coaches who are at the forefront of the game now who could do a job at a club like Anderlecht. So I think the hierarchy obviously need to align and on a strategy and kind of get their house in order first. But again, it's back to the Olivier Renard thing. If I'm a coach and I'm interested in Anderlecht or Anderlecht are interested in me, there are so many unanswered questions here where you want to know the vision, don't you? What's the strategy? Because the club desperately needs some stability that searches to get back to the big time and to be the Anderlecht that it isn't at the moment and hasn't been for a long time. Worth reminding everybody that, it's almost 9 years since they last won a trophy back in 2017, and this endless search to become the top club that the name suggests that they are. There's two aspects to this. Does the history and the culture and the name count for anything anymore? Can it count for anything after that long without a trophy? Because for some it will still be very attractive, but it's coming down to, I suppose, trusting in the process. And I just feel that the most successful club side in Belgium historically don't have a plan or a strategy at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, that's very clear. I think you could say that there's a lot of things to clear out there. So Hasley definitely was an issue on his own, and like so he should have been out. Like I think we talked about that actually at length last week. So maybe I won't repeat too much of that, but yeah, he definitely was one of the issues. But indeed, higher up in the hierarchy, there's that it's such an unclear structure anyway, and too many people on too many different places. So it's also more like in the on how the club is structured. They made a lot of changes in the past few years, which can work. Maybe on the longer term, that's not necessarily bad, but yeah, they need to find for each of those spots, of course, the right people on the right place. And at the moment, I think it's fair to say that's still not the case, or maybe it is the case. They made some changes, of course, already this season still. So there's some people that are, well, new, even though, sorry, even though there are familiar faces, but back into the club that might need a little time in their new roles. In Bornau and Verschuren, and yeah, they need to quickly picking up decisions and making some important ones, of course. But yeah, and then one of them is, of course, is Renard going to be the man that needs to be out as well. His track record isn't speaking for him currently, for sure. Indeed, so I would also be maybe in favor of that. Of course, that doesn't bring that stability. So that's like for all these positions, they need to have a longer term vision. Except maybe the manager. I know our Ben also he shared his thoughts on that already as well, and he feels like they should keep going on with Ed Still, who was assistant before, of course, as a manager until the end of the season, and then make the actual decision and buy themselves some time. I feel similar. I'm not sure. I would still hire someone else, to be fair. Maybe it's like another manager, but indeed someone that just for the remainder of the season, and then maybe see to find someone else, or see if the one that they hired that would be indeed the right candidate, that they saw enough, and then make a judgment call on that. Although, of course, in football, we all kind of know, to be fair, maybe like whoever that will be, if it's Ed Still or if it's the new manager, if they win three of the next 5 games, and they will get an extension immediately. That's just how the way it goes somehow. Well, not only in football, also at Anderlecht themselves. We saw this in the near past, still I guess in the short term past. With Hubert, for example, and with Hazi himself, actually, probably you could also argue that, even though he even didn't get the results really last season. But yeah, yeah. So I would say yeah, with Renard going out is just not ideal, just with the timing as well, of course, because now the rumors were already going and like are still going, so maybe he does stay. At the moment, that's still hanging in the air, but it seems more and more likely that he isn't. And of course, like we had this transfer window shutting and shutting down, and then yeah, a lot of activity, and like he wasn't still responsible, of course. So that's not ideal when you might want to leave, like in both senses, of course. Like because we all know, of course, often. I'm not saying it's the case, but generally it is the case. I guess like the sporting directors often get are not completely impartial in deals, and also get some get money on the amount of deals they do, on how high they when they reach some targets, I guess, mainly that transfer targets. So like, yeah, personally, maybe personal feelings and the club feelings could very important. Still conjecture, but could play a role there as well. Well, he also doesn't have his past in his favor though, as well. On my conjectures here, that he has been part of that in the past. But yeah, just in general, like a lot of people need to. Yeah, the vision needs to be there. There still is that aspect of Anderlecht, of course. Despite their drought, they're still the biggest club in Belgium in many aspects. And also, I mean, the stadium, the fans, everything, the marketing, for example, is going really, really well, even though more and more people are already now questioning that a bit, of course, as the job of marketing to be very positive about a lot of things. And yeah, when it hasn't been that positive on the pitch, that's yeah, at some point you still lose people. But so far, yeah, the history they have is still really playing their its role in like and also in sponsoring and in financial grounds. And of course, it's a club that speaks to both sides of the country, never unimportant in Belgium as well. So it attracts fans from both sides of the language divide. Yeah, that's really uh, definitely still the biggest club, but yeah, do they still merit that title? In some ways, probably already not. So far, they can uphold it off the pitch, and I do feel like okay, a lot would need to go wrong for a long time still extra before that would change. But yeah, that in the to get some success again on the pitch, yeah, there needs to be a lot of changes in a lot of aspects of the club and departments of the club, and yeah, longer term, indeed, and people that really have a heart for the club is part of it, I guess. But of course, they need to be competent. That's the main thing, and competent, and yeah, and be indeed part of a process, like you mentioned, trust the process. Yeah, it's been a mantra for too long already, maybe, but since they actually haven't put that trust in their process internally, yeah, probably long enough on several departments again. Yeah, there's some additional damage that has been created by now, and yeah, that won't be solved easily. On the other hand, like to be a bit more optimistic for them, of course, we also see, of course, that like just two or three critical positions on the pitch, putting really good transfers in there can already make you, yeah, be part of a title race and more title contender, and maybe even grab a title. It could be enough. So on the pitch, I don't think the core top players would be there, but like few minor tweaks or major tweaks, but not doesn't need to mean 700 new players, but it could mean the world of the world of could make a world of difference, of course, and could mean the world of good for them. But yeah, we'll this will still take some extra time, and for this season, yeah, I mean, like we said, it's unfortunately they lost this game, and now it's really their season hinges on the semifinals that will be played soon. And yeah, if they slip down a bit further, of course, because they still really have a tough schedule, and if they actually make the Champions playoffs, which they seem to be so certain of not that long ago already as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting this, because I think you could make an appointment kind of quite quickly in a situation like this, I suppose, and go again, or as as our Ben was saying, unfortunately he's not with us this week, as we know, but he was sharing his thoughts on this before we recorded, and feels kind of quite strongly they should stick with Ed Still, who of course has plenty of experience in Belgium as a T1, but most recently as part of Besnik Hazi's staff. I think there is a strong argument in favour of sticking with that a while and just taking your time on this, because until a decision is made around things like whether Reynard's going to be there longer term or not, then it's going to be difficult to have a conversation with a coach as well, because there are so many unanswered questions. Coaches coming into a club want to know, okay, who's the sporting director going to be, particularly if there's a doubt that someone isn't going to be there, because you need to know what and who you're working with. These things are really, really important for trust more than anything else, and relationships kind of starting off on the right foot, and that isn't kind of clear yet. of the candidates who've kind of been name dropped already, two of them will surprise nobody and probably should have been name dropped, to be fair as well. We did mention one of them last week, actually. Torsten Fink's name had already been thrown into the mix, which in many ways is kind of understandable. The other one is a certain Mark van Bommel, who, again, has proven that he can win things at one of the bigger clubs in Belgium, of course, during his time at Antwerp. Van Bommel obviously has turned down quite a few offers, concrete offers from clubs both inside and outside Belgium. In fact, been linked not too long ago with the Anderlecht job, and the stars didn't quite align there. So it'll be interesting to see if that conversation is revisited on any level. Fink's an interesting one for me, Joris, because I think I can see why he's attractive to them. Obviously, both of those names that I've mentioned are currently without a club. So they wouldn't have to pay a fee to buy somebody out of a contract, which is obviously attractive. Fink has good experience in Belgium now. He did very well at St Truden, as we know, with a young squad. That got him his move to a bigger club. He went to Genk. Ultimately didn't work out for him there. But the thing about Fink, which I find interesting, is he does understand the expectations of an elite level club. And when I say elite level club, I mean a club that is, a top club in that particular country. And I'm thinking obviously of the fact is during his playing career, obviously he had a hugely successful period at Bayern. So, he knows the demands of these environments where you are expected to win, and the club culture demands regular silverware in order to maintain momentum. So in a lot of respects, he fits the leadership model. The interesting thing is he does have a reputation for being a bit of a micromanager at times, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, because he has proven that he's actually very good with younger players as well, and can get the best out of younger players and improve them. I think it's some of the other backroom things that obviously have to align really to kind of get Fink on board. And if I was him, I would have more questions for the board. I would rather be interviewing them than the other way around. But I suspect there will be a conversation, because he does meet a lot of their requirements. What do you think, Joris? Is there any other names at the moment that you think should be of interest to the Moves?
Well, the main thing I want to give a few caveats to a few things. One of the things is to Edward Still. He hasn't won a game in his last 17 games that he managed, so that should change. Otherwise, it changed quickly. Okay, of course, It was a smaller club, so it's not completely illogical that this happened, but nonetheless, that's with the crucial weeks coming up, then that needs to change quickly, or I don't think they would do that. But on the other hand, I also want to give the caveat to what I said before. Maybe going for another manager, but only to for this half of the season and then see further. That's not very attractive for the manager itself as well, though. So that would limit the options as well. I'm not sure, for example, my ideal candidate would be a type of an experienced manager like Fink, maybe indeed, or Van Bommel, who maybe indeed would jump into that, but that are also the least likely candidates to agree to such kind of deal, I suppose. So that's the reality that's there. So maybe the caveat or the nuances, or like the questions that create extra questions around the roles. I do think those are like I mentioned, like probably good candidates. Yeah. I mean, there's some wild names that still go around through the fans, which are unfortunately or fortunately not available. I mean, would not reasonably be reasonable. Like a Kittel Knudsen from Bodo is currently at the worst position to get him, because I think he just prolonged his contract, but mainly, I mean, they're actually active in Champions League still now. So like maybe it would have been possible even a year ago, although probably not for a Belgian side anyway, but because he turned down bigger clubs even already. But okay, he seems to be more into projects, and that good. Anderlecht is still on that. That's maybe the type of manager, but then a lower profile one that maybe would jump on it. Still, that would think okay, but then I don't have a particular name, but then that would be indeed someone who's coming from a lower league, so who is gathering experience, but so has some experience, but is not there yet at the level where like Anderlecht is not attractive anymore. So that's if that makes any sense, and I'm sure there's no one to be found, maybe even to like that. But yeah, something in that vein. So either that, or indeed an experienced manager that would be okay with stay. Yeah, well, we would agree with going for the half season contract for now, and with the option to extend if it goes well, and that if that goes well doesn't need to really necessarily depend only on the results, but also the style of play, because and how you handle pressure. That's the nature of the job at Anderlecht as well, of course. So that's definitely, yeah, extra factors again. So I'm probably actually raising more question marks. I'm just not sure if there is an ideal candidate. So I start to see why they chose Hazi. I have to wash my mouth after saying this, but like why they chose Hazi, because there was no one else. Who else would take the job? But at that time, that situation was different, of course. Maybe in the beginning, like it would be a similar situation as what I'm proposing now, but that probably they should not have extended his contract past the summer. In the summer, they hopefully, usually there are more options, or there are more managers looking for either jumping back into jobs in general, or to make a switch and cleanly leave a club as well. But I, to be fair, so I'm not coming with any solutions, but with more questions and remarks on what I think that would be needed. And okay, a few names indeed, but like it are the usual suspects. I'm not reinventing the wheel there either, but I doubt that they will be interested in this sort of deal. that's the big issue there.
Yeah, I think you've summed that up really nicely. The gap between the expectation and the reality at the moment is difficult to bridge. And that's the essential challenge awaiting whoever the successful candidate's going to be. We will see how this one transpires over the next few weeks, because like Arben, I don't think we're necessarily going to get a quick appointment. In this case, I think they are going to take a bit of time, which would be wise. Judging that is difficult as well, because I think if you leave it till too late or leave it right to the end of the season, then obviously you lose crucial preparation time going into next season as well. So decisions around who the sporting director is going to be need to be made, pretty quickly now. So at least one major decision has made, and then others can kind of follow from that, really. So yeah, one step at a time, I think, is the way that they're going to have to take this. So we'll see how this one develops. In terms of what else has been going on around the Pro League this weekend, Joris, Union Saint-Gilloise getting the better of Club this weekend. Club having, facing that quandary that this is not the first time Club have found it difficult to kind of get to grips with Union Saint-Gilloise's tactical approach to kind of playing them, failing to beat the block. Particularly after they went behind in the game. We've seen this before, where they go behind and they can't get the better of the block, and just simply weren't really good enough to particularly get anything out of the game. A lot of Club fans very critical of Union's approach to playing them. We've heard this before as well, and you have to say, to be fair to Union in their defence, it's absolutely their right to approach any game in any way they feel fit to get the result tactically. That's their job. But they are, Union, are the big winners of the weekend. They've extended their lead, so they will be absolutely delighted with that, because we've gone through a little period coming into the winter break where things had got really, really tight, and the gap, such as it was, had essentially evaporated. That's been restored to a certain extent, and Ivan Leko's appointment is, as we were saying recently, looks to have not had the shock effect ultimately that it was intended to have. Good week all round for Union as well. Fantastic result for them in Europe as well. So a really good week all round for them. Worth touching as well, maybe on, I mentioned Debo Summers having a really good game against his former side. Very nice to see some solidarity in football for a change. The Circle fans being very magnanimous about that performance, applauding his goal. Nice to see these things actually, because not only did he not celebrate, I think that must have been a difficult moment probably for him personally, but he handled that really professionally. And Circle aside, who last week we highlighted as being probably one of the sides who we felt still probably had a bit of work to do if they could in this window, and to be fair to them, they have. They've brought in a couple at the back which they needed to do. They've lost Utkus. We will see how these new additions go. The back was definitely where they probably needed the most work, because they are still conceding too many goals. But it's interesting to see that they have been as active as possible. And Leuven, who I was very critical of last week, I've signed somebody. They've done something at the last minute as well. Has any other transfers caught your eye now that the window is closed?
We'll touch on a few games maybe later on as well, but or come back to games that you touched on already as well. But the main one, I guess, is the Angulo one at Anderlecht going out. I know we talked about Anderlecht already a lot, so maybe we shouldn't talk too much about them anymore. But it is a big one, of course. A big move. You touched on it already a bit earlier in the episode, but I do think it's indeed the big move of transfer closure day. But as it came quite unexpected, he had extended his contract in the beginning of the season after some good performances. He hasn't really been able to replicate all of that. He's been the best version of himself so far, for sure. But I'm not sure if he was really ready already for another step, to be honest, because there were enough games where he was actually not present. The big thing he is leaving behind is, of course, his physicality, or his physique at least. He kept on trying, and even after minute 80, he could still try the same things with a higher chance of success as well. Of course, by that time. I still feel like it's a remarkable transfer that he got, but also the timing of the transfer, because I do believe that extension was to key with having in mind, okay, he might leave after the season and after having played a good World Cup potentially as well. But yeah, a bit that they couldn't refuse, an offer they couldn't refuse came in already yesterday as of recording. And the Anderlecht went for it. Definitely a big move for him. And despite what I said, of course, he was one of the better players, or maybe even the best player of Anderlecht this season so far. So that's going to be a big loss on a side that has already been underperforming lately, at least. So interesting to see what the impact of that will be. One of their more technical players, even though it was a lot of hit and miss, maybe. I've never been, as you can hear from me, I've never been a big fan of him, but he did bring something, and he for sure, like some technicality, some physicality, so a few things that any side could use, and we will see how he will do in the Premier League as well, of course. What else is there? Might be leaving as of recording. Still medical scheduled in Istanbul to sign for Besiktas tomorrow if everything goes well there. But okay, that would also be for quite a big fee, but it's not completely unexpected because he hasn't really featured much under high, only in the last few games now. But there was a bit more rotation as well. He featured a bit more again. I don't think he started the game before that rotation kicked in, to be honest. And apart from that, it has been relatively quiet window. Also safe to say, Many clubs are holding out. There's a multitude of reasons for that, of course. TV contract being uncertain being one of them, but just one of them as well, to be honest. Also the formats that's yeah, is less inviting for clubs that are feeling that they're in danger. Like there's not the feeling of danger is maybe less present there this season than in previous seasons because of the only one potential side going down as well. So that's really a big factor as well. So clubs are a bit more cautious for sure. Yeah, the Vase to Leuven one is an interesting one, I guess, in a few ways as well. Okay, Westerlo got rid of a striker for once. That's already something because they brought in someone new, I believe, as well. Still, since last time we were sitting down, and it was not a defender yet. Yeah, that's yet another topic. But yeah, of course, Leuven do need a striker, so that in that sense they feel that. But is he the man that they need? I'm also not sure because he's the striker a striker that isn't good enough currently at Westerlo and doesn't feature as much anyway either. Going to solve all of their issues with the goal scoring. I'm not very certain of that either. Also, yeah, you can look at the agents and so on as well. Again, there how that move. I guess that's the main reason why that move went through. Nico Vase, who is of course also a former professional football player, and Kian Vase's dad, of course, is working, of course, as an agent as well at a certain management agency that also has some other Leuven players under their wings. So I don't think there's a coincidence there. They probably were looking for a solution for him and found it quite nearby, actually. Still, but in that sense, quite interesting. But apart from that, yeah, there were quite a few rumors, but in the end, it didn't materialize. The Ordóñez one to Crystal Palace, for example, 40 million. That's a hefty sum to not take from Club Brugge's side. But that's there. Onyedika has always had rumors as well, but it seems he's staying. Even though, of course, in Turkey, where Galatasaray is already for a few transfer windows behind him, could still try to make a last ditch. Try to make a last ditch deal for him, but I don't think player and Club Brugge are actually aiming for that currently. Then Smits also had some rumors where Genk actually seems to have accepted the bids that they got from Wolfsburg, but Smits maybe wisely because of the position Wolfsburg is in as well, chose to not go for that adventure, at least not in winter, and not in the current state of as well. So yeah, these were more than nearly there transfers. Cercle made a few signings as well that could be interesting. Hashioka to Ghent also will be interesting to see how he evolved in abroad now. Former Sint-Truiden player, of course. On all most of the others, I think we touched on. I'm focusing a bit on transfer window on the transfer deadline day, of course, here because we already touched on quite some before. But yeah, I'm a bit interested also in the transfer that Anderlecht in the end did manage to get through, the loan transfer of Angeli, I believe it is, French youth international for at the back as well. But of course, he's still young, so will he have an immediate impact or not? We will see. But there were that must have been a very scary hours again at Anderlecht, I know, but came circling back to them now, I guess. But there seemed to be an issue with like the amount of players they could loan from other sides this season, but apparently there was a fault in the system where like an old loanee from Anderlecht from a few seasons ago was still registered for this season, which was a mistake in the system. They couldn't do anything about it. They reported it, and luckily after the deadline passed, but they still got the permission that they had actually done everything else right, I guess, and it was not their fault that they could sign him and then announce him today as well. So let's see if he will be more than just me mentioning it here once in the podcast and never hearing more out of it anymore. We will see. But yeah, and maybe another interesting move, but that's not a player transfer. Might be the one from Frutos to Charleroi now as well as sporting director. Of course, I'm not sure if that's completely confirmed yet, but at least that would be an interesting move, and would leave La Louvière without both Verwilge and Frutos then. So their sportive direction, I guess. So also in interesting times for them.
Yeah, that's another bit of news over the last 24 hours. Joris is right; it hasn't been confirmed yet, but it's now looking highly likely that Nicolas Frutos is going to be leaving RAL to go to Charleroi and join Mehdi Bayat and his staff there as effectively as their sporting director. It'll be interesting to see what his job title actually is, Joris, because Charleroi have never officially operated with a sporting director. Mehdi Bayat's been very public about that in the past, saying that we don't really operate with a sporting director. We have a kind of recruitment cell, but in many respects, it's Mehdi and an invisible team behind him, some of which are known, some of which are not. So it'll be very interesting to see them bring in somebody who is a very well known face. And has experience in this area, that's for sure. One of the transfers actually in this window that kind of caught my interest actually is actually Dirk Asari, who's gone from Liers to Zulte Waregem. I think this will be an interesting one to kind of keep an eye on. Really promising 21-year-old Ghanaian central midfielder. I'm quite excited to see he'll do stepping up to the top level, and obviously that's one of those ones that hasn't gathered much attention really. But is definitely one to keep an eye out on, I think, and we and others will absolutely be doing that. So let's talk players of the week, Joris. Who's impressed you this week? Who's up in lights at your end?
I might step on your toes potentially here, I think, because I do believe there's only one player that actually makes the cut here and deserves to be here. You already mentioned him as well earlier in your recording, but Somers scoring a goal indeed and giving 2 assists against his former side in an otherwise also, I have to admit, maybe relatively uneventful weekend in the sense of exciting games and performances, despite of course there were some interesting games and some top games in there as well, but the quality was not always there. So I think I will take that. We'll take him as he just deserves that light here maybe. If that is the one you would have picked, that's because we didn't, as you can see here, listeners, we never really. Rarely, not never, but rarely discuss this in advance. If that is your player of the week, but I can also pick. I have a few other names I could drop if it's indeed stepping on your toe.
Well, we always like to keep a few in reserve here at the BFP, just in case. And you probably won't believe us when we say this, but actually, I'm not sure we've actually stepped in each other's toes yet. Even when the three of us have been together, we obviously have slightly different tastes, but it will happen at some point. I've actually gone this week. I'm going to indulge myself slightly this week and pick a Mechelen player. Mechelen obviously have a new striker in the building. Leon Lobberbach has left Belgium. He's now gone to Italy. He's got his big move.
And I can assure you, not only Leon Lauberbach must have been like jumping in his room, like going to Venezia, of course, just on a city level anyway. I mean, Mechelen is a nice city, but we all know that the Venezia, the attraction of Venice as well, of course, Venice as well, of course. So yeah, I'm sure he will have been delighted, but I'm also sure that in some Scottish apartments, well, not apartments, some. We'll leave that in the middle, actually. But in some Scottish place, there was someone jumping in his room when he first heard the news that the rumors already, maybe even, but definitely when the transfer was announced.
Yeah, I've long been on record, haven't I? And everyone will know this. Everyone who listens regularly, I've been on record as saying I've not been his biggest fan, despite the fact, to be fair, he has got better. He did get better during his time at Mechelen. He had a really very slow start and looked like he wasn't going anywhere, but did kind of play himself kind of into his role actually, and eventually acclimatised kind of quite well to Belgian football. Took his time to do it, but certainly did, and became a reasonable contributor towards the end. Yeah, so Leon is now in Italy, and he's been talking actually quite a lot this week about, you know, what you were just saying there, Joris, about, you know, the weather, the food, the location. I mean, you know, it's kind of, you know, you don't really need to go and research that one, do you? You know, your agent goes, you know, it's Venezia, yes, I'm going. And obviously they're sitting very pretty at the moment, you know, so he has a real chance of playing Serie A football next season. So his timing could be ideal here. So good deal as well. His replacement just arrived in Belgium, coming from a good pedigree as well. A good deal for Mechelen, spending just over half of the fee, I think, that they got for Lauberbach. So about 1.2 million for his replacement. Young 20-year-old Dutch striker, Bouke Boersma. He is my player of the week because I thought he had a really solid debut this past weekend, which in some ways is not a surprise because he's coming to a new club actually in quite good form. You know, he's coming from the Graafschap in the Dutch second tier, just off the back of scoring 12 goals in 21 games as well. So, you know, generally speaking, he's in good form. But this weekend, instant impact, 2 assists. Playing a huge part in actually Mechelen getting a point at Leuven in the end as well. So he comes in, and I think already he looks like an upgraded Lauberbach. I mean, I would say that, of course, because I've been quite critical of him. But I you know, here's somebody coming in who is already scoring regularly, who has tremendous potential and was quite highly sought after as well. I mean, Mechelen have done really well to get this over the line quickly because there was doubts, there was interest there, but there were doubts whether they were going to be able to beat other clubs. You know, Sampdoria were hot on his heels, as were Karlsruhe, but Go Ahead Eagles looked like they were favourites to secure him. Everything looked like it was in place until Mechelen's Tom Callaway picked up the phone and said, I've set up a Zoom call with some Malinois legends for you to convince you to come here. And that's exactly what happened in the end. Yeah, it did very, very well. It's always nice to see a player doing well on their debut, I think, you know, because it's a big thing. Coming to, you know, albeit your neighbours, he's not come too far geographically speaking, but, you know, new country, new setup, new expectations. And because he's been performing quite well, there's this sense that, you know, they want him to hit the ground running, and he kind of has done that. So it's going to be interesting to see how he develops. One thing I would say about him is he's obviously not quite up to speed yet with the physicality of Belgian football. You know, there was and I did see some Mechelen fans actually discussing that this weekend, saying he's going to need a little bit of time. But the good news is he had some instant impact, and yeah, just kind of good to see. Yeah, Bouke Boersma, my player of the week. Did you have any honourable shout outs that you wanted to mention as worthy of a mention?
I definitely do. I will, but first also gonna comment on Boersma as well. Yeah, like also touching on that last point, of course, like it's in that sense in his first game, so of course this could be just an impression that is wrong, but a completely different type than Lauerbach, of course, because I think he was very, very actually not so well. He's quite absent in the game. Also, not that many touches. Maybe was it that stat? I'm not entirely sure. They had the least touches of all players, even.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but okay, he did something with it, of course. But like Lauerbach, of course, he brings the work rate. But with, of course, the other sides of his game maybe lesser developed. Of course, if he gives 2 assists or can in any way can contribute, I'm sure Boersma, you will prefer him over Lauberbach at any time. But let's see if he can continue. But I think that also hinges together with that, getting up to speed and more the physicality of the league. It's indeed a big league. It's more like Mechelen hijacked that deal with Go Ahead Eagles, actually. So indeed, it's not like Mechelen were quick to get that over the line, of course, but also at the same time, it was more of a last-ditch approach, maybe. But that's definitely an interesting pickup, and we'll see if your joy with him, in the whole combination of this transfer or this combination of transfers is indeed warranted. But yeah, off to a good start in numbers, of course.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how club lure players, and of course, Pete Den Boer needs no introduction to Mechelen fans. He was set up with a Zoom call to tell Bauka all about the city and kind of what to expect in terms of the club's culture, and he did actually. He was talking about that. Before the game this weekend, saying that did play a factor in him choosing to come in the end. Being sold the environment and the culture by a club legend. Anyone else catch your eye this week, Joris? We always like to credit where credit's due. You mentioned Thibaut Summers, an obvious and a right pick. Nice to see him receive such a positive reception, despite being delivering several daggers to the heart of his old club, really, if I can put it like that, this past weekend as well. It's not very often that you see fans of a player and their former club applauding when they score against their former club, such as the feeling of warmth there. Somebody who is very much known in circles, if I can use that phrase, as being Mr. Circle, and rightly so, and he will always have a soft spot, for green and black. There's no doubt about that. I've long been on record as being a big fan of Thibaut Summers on a number of levels. Been lucky enough to meet Thibaut a couple of times as well. He's an absolute delight to be around. Really humble guy. Leaves himself on the pitch, like him a lot, and thoroughly professional performance really this weekend from him, which is all you can ask for. Before we go, Joris, we should of course touch on the Challenger Pro League as well, because plenty happening there. This past weekend, Club Next beat Serang 1-0. That's their third win in the bounce, by the way. What on earth is happening? Have they turned a corner finally? Young Genk beat Eupen 2-0. Anderlecht Futures and RFC Liège finished goalless. Olympic Charleroi and Frank Baran finished likewise goalless. Molenbeek beat Young Ghent 1-0. Lommel and Patro finished 1 goal apiece. Another goal for a certain Ryan Angalan. He's having an instant impact. Kortrijk beat Lokeren 3-2, and Liège lost 2-1 to Beerschot. So Beveren are still top, and as we were saying recently, it's really still very much a matter of time for them. I think 4 wins away now before they secure promotion, so they can almost touch it, as we were saying last week. They've brought in another striker over the last few days, Joris, to kind of beef up their offensive options, but probably this is one more with an eye on next season, when they're back in the Pro League, which nobody doubts that's really going to happen now. It's just a question of when. Yeah, they've brought in 21-year-old Dutch striker Jesse van der Aar from Utrecht, with an option to extend that, I think, to 2028. And he's quite a physical striker by all accounts. Don't know him well, but he seems to have the general profile that you would see in a lot of top flight clubs. So I think they're thinking ahead to next season with that one, and you can understand why. Club Next, 3 wins from 3 as well. Their form is really turned around. And in terms of the scoring charts, which we haven't talked about for a while, a certain Thierry Ambrose remains top. He's scored 20. He will almost certainly be back in the Pro League next season, I would imagine. Might be with a different club, of course, but I'd be surprised if we didn't see him back in the top flight. And right on his coattails with 19 goals at the moment is Lommel's veteran striker, Ralf Suntjens, who has, for those of you who don't know, probably one of the best nicknames in football. Ralf Suntjens, otherwise known as Son of God, which is just the most delightful play on Son of God, of course. Are Lommel selling T-shirts of that, Joris? Because if they're not, they're missing a revenue trick. That's all I can say.
I don't think they are, to be honest, because of course it's also a nickname that goes along with him before. I haven't checked that, so maybe Lommel fans will contradict me here, or we should look it up for next week's episode. Lommel also did an interesting transfer, I found as well. It kind of goes together with that because it's another Dutch striker that they brought in on loan, Robin van Duiven, who was actually ahead of Bauke Boersma in the top scorer list in the second division, Keukenkampioen-divisie in the Netherlands, of course. So he scored 14 goals for young PSV. They have some experience with Van Duiven last time. Van Duiven's at Lommel last time. It didn't really work out, but that was not with him, of course. So maybe this time it will be a better history. Interestingly, of course, he's on loan until the end of the season, but his contract is expiring at PSV as well at the end of the season. But it's even more complicated already. So he's going to he's only staying there for half a season. So maybe it's even a statement for maybe a promotion push, because he is going to go to Spain, to Real Valladolid next summer. So it's a weird one, maybe, that some of Lommel's transfers anyway are, but maybe a good addition since they are actually in a quite decent spot to fight for promotion still, at least. The two promotion spots seem far away for them, but for the playoffs, maybe they want to get something in as well. And now, of course, it's an experienced striker, and the combination of an experienced striker with a young striker could also work, of course. They probably can play together as well. To be fair, because Ralf Suntjens, throughout his career at least, has not always been put as main striker, as the point of the attack, but the spearhead, but also more on the wings. We'll see how they will fill everything in there, of course. But I found it an interesting addition. And now looking at how I wasn't entirely certain how everything was put together now for the player himself. It's he really wanted to go away from Eindhoven. That it seems, at least. And maybe after he got that deal with Valladolid, they were also like, okay, well, why don't you go away now? Even if it's to a completely other club. That's definitely a short term solution or addition for them, for sure. And we'll see how we will do in the second tier of Belgian football.
Yeah, it's amazing to think, isn't it, that a 37-year-old striker can hit 19 goals, albeit in the second from top tier in Belgium. That's still extraordinary, and I think he was expected to do well when Ralf Suntjens came in. They did have high expectations of him, because he'd been doing well before he actually came to Lommel. Although it looked like his career was kind of petering out until he got this offer that kind of reignited his career, and thought, okay, let's go again for a little while. And it really has worked out for them. Lommel, of course, and we've kind of hinted at this, they have very much, because of operational changes inside the club, they really have changed their kind of recruitment strategy a little bit. The club, obviously, part of the City Football Group, but their recruitment certainly this season and coming into the start of the season has been a little bit less international in focus and has become a little bit more localised. So they do have more players from experience in Belgium, but also from the Dutch league as well. So perhaps less players from South America and areas that we have seen kind of coming to the club in recent years as well, with some of the operational changes behind the scenes, and that slight tweaking to how they do that seems to be working for them because they're very much in the mix. For having a good go at coming up via the playoffs anyway, as are Beerschot as well. A little shout out to them. We felt like they'd kind of fallen away, but they're right back in the conversation again. And it's outside those kind of top two. It's looking really interesting. Just before we go, Joris, another bit of news that I was keen to get your thoughts on. Not that there's too much to analyse with this particular one, but it's a story that's kind of slipped under the radar. Ticket prices are going up. Obviously, this doesn't just affect football, of course. VAT rates going up, so there'll be an extra euro going on to tickets, and an extra €1.50 going on to tickets, €25 and above. So for those of you who enjoy an away day, you're going to be paying fractionally more for it. Never nice to see fans kind of paying more, but in some respects it could have been worse in a way, Joris, couldn't it?
Yeah, that's fortunately the reality of living in Belgium at the moment, I guess, as well. I'll have to correct myself in a few topics actually from Lommel, of course. Still, of course, Sanchez has actually mainly featured as striker, so I'm assuming he will play that role still. I might have confused him with one of his many brothers. And talking about brothers, that brings me back to Van Duiven's story as well, of course. Now both brothers Van Duiven. I actually forgot that Jason Van Duiven actually was still in the squad as well. So that also makes that move from Robin maybe a bit more understandable as well, going to play with his brother and hopefully having some fun together. Jason hasn't completely put everything on fire yet this season either, but it's going a little bit better than last season, I believe. Mainly they are reunited, I guess, and their agents probably also played a role in that. But just a few quick calls must have made that possible. Then, of course, remains the question: does he indeed have the level based on statistics for this season? It seems okay, of course, that he should be able to also get some sportive merit on the for Lommel in this upcoming few games actually that there's left for them, and in the playoffs, presumably, if they get that, of course.
And there we are. There we have it. Another week in Belgian football wrapped up nicely. Thanks for joining me, Joris, and I hope you have a great week, whatever you're up to. We will reconvene next week. Hopefully our Ben's laptop will be in situ. He'll be able to join us. He won't have a blown-up laptop. He'll be back with us. If you do enjoy what we're doing here at the BFP, and we know lots of you do, please do consider leaving us a little review on your podcast platform of choice. That would be very lovely of you. It also helps new listeners find us as well. Equally, if you really, really like what we're doing, and some of you do, apparently, looking at some of the feedback, you can, of course, leave us a little donation at our Buy Me a Coffee account, which goes a small way to meeting some of our production costs here at the BFP. Equally, you can find me and the guys via social media, should you want us to hunt us down individually, which sometimes some of you do. I've had Sunderland fans getting in touch with me, Joris, because I've been talking about Nielsen and Angulo quite a lot. I was on BBC Radio Newcastle earlier on this evening, funnily enough, talking about Angulo's switch to Sunderland. So yeah, Sunderland fans have been getting in touch with me, and I've been getting lots of what's he like messages, those kind of things. So yeah, you can find both me and Joris and our Ben on social media as well. But whatever you're up to, everybody, have a great few days, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.